I am not Mark Zuckerberg, but we both live in San Francisco, are both entrepreneurs, both own hoodies, and for both Mark and I, the moment that set us on our paths came early, some way midway through college. For Mark, it was a bad breakup that led to a brilliant idea, Facebook. For me, it was a book that fell into my lap, a review copy sent to my journalist mother that led to the Good Food Awards, pictures of which you see behind me. And while we both embraced a simple experience to create something aimed at shifting culture, unlike Mark Zuckerberg, I didn't follow the classic startup path. Perhaps I should have. It seems to have worked out pretty well for Mark. Facebook has been phenomenally successful in catalyzing a widespread cultural transformation, not to mention setting him up for a comfortable life. Yet growing and crafting good food, doing any sort of work in the food movement, has always struck me as incompatible with the startup culture. There's a concept in San Francisco's booming tech industry that all it takes to be successful is a novel idea and a lot of hard work, maybe a little bit of luck. Think Bill Gates in his garage. While this special sauce, the myth goes, a 20-year-old can drop out of college, solve an important problem, and become a millionaire in no time. Perhaps a good idea is worth $1 million in the tech industry, but apply this model to food, and things begin to break down pretty quickly. In the food world, good ideas are a dime a dozen. Ellis Waters once told me, an idea is only as good as the person who can bring it to life. Things don't come quickly, and while a good idea paired with the willingness to work hard are important pieces of the puzzle, I have found the key ingredient to success is collaboration and the willingness to help others. As best I can tell, food has always been the primary motivation in my life. I was a shy and mild-mannered baby who once viciously bit another child who tried to grab my cookie. I grew into a teenager who baked instead of partied, a college kid who spent summers cooking on the line, a 20-year-old who got her hands on a book of Slow Food's collected essays and had the revelation that would pave the path to the Good Food Awards. Food and pleasure could go hand in hand with saving the planet. Unlike the fast track Mark Zuckerberg took to creating Facebook, the road to building the Good Food Awards spanned a decade. Fresh out of college, with a shiny new economics degree, I enrolled in cooking school in Italy. Why, I had asked my favorite econ professor, in a country with much less per capita wealth than the US, did nearly everyone have access to top quality, phenomenally delicious food? While back in America, milk tasted like the refrigerator, and it required the guile of Sherlock Holmes to track down a tasty tomato. The most fundamental law of economics, that wealth creates access to superior goods, was being violated when it came to food. There was some secret the Italians knew that held the key to a delicious world, and I was going to find out what it was. My professor helped me get a grant to cover half of tuition, and together with 12 years of babysitting money, I was off to Italy to see what I could discover. I had no idea what I would do once I emerged from cooking school. I was pretty sure working in kitchens wasn't right for me. But I knew it was a step towards slow food, and decided then on a lifelong policy to take the first step towards the people, organizations, and ideas I was drawn to, even when I couldn't see too far down the road. As it happened, the vice president of Slow Food attended our graduation, and before too long, I was the newest intern at Slow Food International headquarters in Bra, writing blogs and translating press releases. Never mind that I had no journalistic aspirations, and my Italian was middling at best. English was what they needed from me, and I was happy to oblige, reveling in the chance to live in Italy, be part of a movement I admired, and absorb 1,000 explicit and implicit lessons on food and life. Working at Slow Food International headquarters led to my dream job as Alice Waters' assistant, which led to opening the Office for Slow Food Nation, an idea of Alice's that became the closest thing to Woodstock the food movement has ever seen. 85,000 farmers, crafters, activists, and food lovers cavorting together for one long weekend, overtaking the city of San Francisco. During the planning of Slow Food Nation, I discovered I had a special affinity for the food crafters, the cheese makers, picklers, roasters, and beekeepers, who are such a quirky and delectable part of our food culture. The 20 crafters I worked most closely with to create the big event, we called them our curators, came together for one last hurrah. The preserves curator, a farmer and jam maker named Casey Hav, mentioned how rewarding it had been to work with the other curators, and everyone quickly agreed that they would love to continue working together, building bridges across different artisan industries, sharing and supporting one another. Well, at a glance, all of this seems at best peripherally related to starting the Good Food Awards. The slow food culture, the Chez Panisse aesthetic, and the Slow Food Nation curators would become the foundation of that entire project. Visiting a beautiful little shop called Melrose and Morgan in London during a post-Slow Food Nation vacation, I got to talking with its delightful owner. I noticed a jar of jelly with a little gold sticker stating, "Great Taste Award Winner." He saw me eyeing it and explained that any time a jar has that sticker, it flies off the shelf. It was an aha moment. I began to realize there might be a way to capture the public's interest in the best of the best and continue the cross-industry collaboration the curators were so excited about. The idea for Slow Food Nation had been seeded. We could do our own stateside version of the Great Taste Awards, but with one catch. Everything entered would have to meet explicit criteria around sustainability and social responsibility. We would drive consumer dollars towards the food crafters that were making the sort of food we all wanted to eat: tasty, authentic, and responsible. Entries would go to a blind tasting with 200 judges from all over the country, from Michael Pollan to Ruth Reichel, to New York Times journalists, to James Beard award-winning chefs, buyers, and the most respected food crafters themselves. Those deemed the tastiest, provided they pass an additional level of scrutiny around their production practices, would be feted at a gathering in San Francisco. We set the entry fee at $10 and decided if we received 500 entries, it would be a clear indication that our country's food movement had arrived, that people truly were making tasty, authentic, and responsible food all over the country. That first year, we received 700 entries. And in the 4 years since, it has grown to nearly 1,500 submissions streaming in each year from all 50 states. This growth happened while simultaneously tripling, then sextupling the cost to enter. Most excitingly, the Good Food Awards became an effective tool to boost sales and shine a spotlight on producers like Emmy Moore of Emmy's Pickles in Oakland, who quadrupled production of her pickled turmeric cauliflower the year after winning, and Eli Cairo of Olympic Provisions in Portland, who placed his very first out-of-state wholesale order at the Good Food Awards marketplace. Fast forward a few years, and Olympic Provisions' excellent finocchiona, lucanica, and saucisson sec can be found in 40 states. Still made with well-raised pigs, still phenomenally tasty. The 11 industries we work in, beer, cheese, cider, pickles, preserves, chocolate, confections, charcuterie, spirits, oil, and honey, together amount to a $200 billion industry. That is more than double the size of the beef industry. With so much cumulative buying power, food and drink crafters could be a powerful leverage point for affecting change in the food system. And while plenty of organizations exist to unite farmers, ranchers, and chefs committed to sustainability, the Good Food Awards and the Good Food Awards Merchants Guild that grew out of it are the only organizations uniting and supporting food crafters committed against all odds to creating a great food culture in the United States. So while my story is the story of an entrepreneur, this project has followed a very different model than the classic startup. Slow, collaborative, and with a different end game in mind. The million or billion-dollar payoff that punctuates the end of a good Silicon Valley story was never and will never be part of our vision. Slow, modest growth, and a company that is able to sustain and nourish its staff are our financial end goal. Not to say $1 million doesn't sound good, But the economic and policy climate we live in perpetuates a food system that does not financially reward integrity. The negative impact of intensive food production on society is externalized, while the benefits to the commons of sustainable food fails to be monetized and directed towards the farmers and crafters creating it. In this environment, choosing to create food where quality, long-term viability of the soil, welfare of animals, health of the consumer, and well-being of staff is not compromised is a decision made despite what good business sense would dictate, knowing full well that in the short term and the medium term, it will not lead to financial rewards. One of the best chocolate makers in the United States, Alan McClure of Patrick Chocolate, a man who has won more Good Food Awards than any other company ever, told me that he still doesn't pay himself a real salary and couldn't do what he does without being subsidized by his wife's income. His chocolate is sold all across the country in Whole Foods and other great stores. Even more astounding, he believes that if we were truly paying fairly for cacao, providing farmers in Africa and beyond with fair wages, a bar of chocolate would cost $30. Having hit a price ceiling, perhaps a smart entrepreneur could create a profitable food company by focusing instead on cost cutting. This is exactly what the industrial food system has done. And indeed, it has led to massive profits. It's also led to the ethical compromises of intensive farming, grueling labor practices, and a host of other problems our country and the world are now grappling to fix. Clearly, these cost-cutting strategies in food production do not align with our definition of good food. But dig a little deeper, and we find a handful of profit-creating measures that do work symbiotically with the food system. Strategies like whole animal eating and decreasing food waste so the same grocery budget can buy better quality food. But these solutions are more complex and require much more cooperation across and within industries. There is no cost savings in whole animal butchery if no one wants to buy the head cheese, bone marrow, pig ear sandwiches, and my personal hometown St. Louis favorite, Snoots, crunchy barbecue sauce doused pig jowls. Before cost cutting can work for individual food producers, there must be a widespread cultural shift in evolution, in tastes and perspectives. A societal transformation that goes against the tides of vested interests. This sort of shift, no single entrepreneur can create alone. It takes hundreds of farmers, food crafters, chefs, and retailers connecting with consumers every single day to turn the tides and create a world where good food culture and thriving businesses can coexist more easily. And therein lies the key difference between the food movement and tech startups. Our wealth is a life well lived. The end game for those creating good food is a good life, filled with delicious things, warm people, and strong community. There's an understanding amongst good food producers that our competitors are not our competitors. Anyone making good food with integrity is a colleague, sharing food's joy and its value with more and more people. Perhaps 5% of the food in the US today meets the Good Food Award standards. While they may be competing for a handful of awards, all 1,500 entrants are united to move that 5 to 10 to 20 and beyond. Together we work to expand the demand, understanding, and enjoyment of good food. Our individual success comes from collaboration rather than competition and singular brilliance. I mentioned that my first job out of college was an internship for Slow Food. I made a few $100s a month under the table. It was 2003. The US economy was picking up, and my classmates had big new jobs making $60,000 a year right out of college, working 80 hours a week for investment banks in New York. I was living in a Baroque town in Italy, having a cappuccino and brioche every morning, fior di latte gelato in the afternoon, a glass of dolcetto with lunch. One wintry day, I took part in the Festival of the Fatted Calf in Carew, a neighboring town. After parading down the cobbled streets, we stopped at an osteria where Carlo Petrini proceeded to pass out bowls of steaming hot beef broth, and into each bowl, legendary Italian winemaker Angelo Gaia tipped a stream of violet Barolo. I sat there bundled up, sipping winey beef broth, and listening to these two larger-than-life men laugh and banter in Piedmontese. And at that moment, I realized, if I were an investment banker, one day I might be fabulously wealthy. And then I'd want to move to Italy and spend my days drinking cappuccinos, eating gelato, and living la dolce vita. Having chosen to work in food, I don't expect hard work and a good idea to transform into a pile of money. But as long as I get to eat good food, work and play with great people, I guess I don't mind that the food movement is nothing like a startup. Thank you.